Hi, this is Lee Langdon. Today on the podcast, I visit with Rebeccas Hobbes. I have only a few friends who legitimately work in the field of politics, and Rebecca is one of them. Her intelligence is off the charts, and I think her great memory has a lot to do with it. But Rebecca is so much more than politics. She has a rich faith, a wonderful family, a musical theater history. We cover some ground, guys. I hope you'll get to know Rebecca better through our conversation. Okay, let's jump in. Welcome to the Young Adult World podcast. Rebeccas Hobbes, welcome to the Young Adult World podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It is so great to have you on the podcast. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a while.
I'm excited.
I am very excited as well. So there's lots of things I want to talk about. Where are you from?
I was born in Quetzaltenango, Guatemala, which for short we call it Xela, X-E-L-A. If you talk to anyone from Guatemala and say Xela, they'll know what you're talking about. So my parents were missionaries there, and that's why myself and all my siblings were born there on the mission field.
Like, how long were your parents missionaries?
My parents were missionaries in Guatemala for 12 years, and then I'm the youngest of four, so I spent the least amount of time there.
So how long did you stay there?
We left when I was about 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And my brother, was much older, so he of course, was there the longest.
Yeah. Do you have any memories?
Oh, yes. I have very vivid memories of birthday parties, which were a huge deal down there. You don't just invite your friends. They bring their parents and their grandparents and their tias and tios and primos and cousins. And so a birthday party could be like 150 people. And the piñatas we had were huge, probably the size of me at the time. So very vivid memories of bike rides to the mountain, the volcano, the local volcano. I remember the cornfield across the street from our house, my church friends, the clinic. I have I think it was just so colorful. I have very vivid memories.
And you were only 4 when you left.
Mm-hmm.
That's really something.
I still talk to the first friend I ever had, Betty. I still talk to her today.
You know the language, like the language just rolls off your...
Spanish?
Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, I was more fluent when I was 7, but I still speak Spanish and read my Bible in Spanish. And I might be a little slower than I was when I was 7, but I still speak.
I would imagine that's very helpful in every aspect of your life. So you moved from Guatemala. You moved here?
Yes, we did move here, where my dad was adjunct Bible faculty at Oklahoma Christian just for one academic year, so not even a full calendar year. And then we moved out to Sacramento, California, where he would be the pulpit minister of a Church of Christ there in Sacramento. And we were there for maybe 11 years, maybe a little more than that.
How was school for you?
I was homeschooled my whole life. In Guatemala, my 3 older siblings attended the Inter-American School, which is where children of diplomats, or military personnel, American teachers who came down there to teach, attended school. And I was not old enough for school at the time, but I would tag along, which seems crazy in today's modern American culture. But down there, it wasn't really that shocking. I would just tag along with them to school, but didn't actually attend. And then when we moved to California, and my parents took a tour of the local public schools there in Sacramento, they thought, let's look at this thing called homeschooling, just because of the way things are in California, and not as excellent as the way things are here in Edmond. So yeah, I was homeschooled K through 12.
Wow. And so who did most of your teaching? Was it your mom or your dad or both? Or?
It was both. It was mostly my mom.
Yeah.
My dad would pitch in on things like history and politics and government, which I'm sure we'll come back to later, because the big reason of why I do what I do today. But mostly my mom. She was our full-time teacher.
Did you excel in academics?
I did thrive. I think my mom is a saint for homeschooling 4 children, and I really thrived in the one-on-one teaching, tutoring, coaching, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if I would have thrived if I was in a classroom of 40 kids. Major respect to teachers who can handle that environment. But I thrived for sure, having my mom heavily invest in me.
Yeah. What was community like for you?
Very social. I'm a highly social person, and Homeschooling just gave me more time to do those things. Piano lessons, piano recitals, musical theater, dance, choir, traveling with the choir, going to state competitions. So highly social, and homeschooling allowed me to do those extracurriculars.
I know you started dancing when you were just little, didn't you?
Mostly in the context of musical theater, but yes.
So tell me about musical theater. How did you get involved?
There was a local theater company there in Sacramento, and my mom signed me up. And
how old were you?
Let's see, 7 or 8. I think so. Very young.
Yeah.
But, you know, she recognized a star.
Of course.
She knew I needed a stage and applause.
So what was your first show? Do you remember?
Bye Bye Birdie.
Bye Bye Birdie.
Yes.
Awesome.
Classic.
You did musical theater. These other things. You said you're in a chorus.
That was a homeschool choir too,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we did go to state competitions. I loved that experience. That was California is so huge, and the homeschool community there is huge. I'm sure it's grown since, but we were in the Northern California homeschool community, which, by the way, the Northern California versus Southern California animosity competition is very real. They're kind of like two different states, and each, the North and the South, they both kind of think the other one is inferior. So that's a very real thing. So we were in the Northern California homeschool group, and yeah, loved choir. Learned a lot of the typical like John Rutter or Eric Whitacre songs, and that was a very fun experience.
Yeah. Did you play any sports or anything like that?
No,
it was never your thing.
I was not the athletic one. I was the musical one.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother was the athletic one.
I don't think I asked you this. What were the subjects that really interested you in school?
History.
Yeah.
I took, with the homeschool co-op, I took a logic and philosophy class. I loved that class. Every Monday we met, and we had a teacher, and I loved that class. So I was really drawn to history, really drawn to philosophy, really drawn to learning how different ideologies emerged and turned into what we would call today the major strains of political thought and the parties. So I loved those classes.
Yeah. And a lot of times people who take those kind of courses go into debating. Did you do any of that?
No, I was never in a formal debate class, but in the homeschool co-op, we did do debates pretty frequently.
Yeah.
So not the formal kind of debate where you are part of a statewide system and you travel and you do forums. Not in that sense, but yeah, I did do debate.
I think it's all part of the process of just learning in a really deep way. I didn't get into any of those things. I was too busy. I don't even know
composing.
what I was doing. No, it wasn't at that point.
Oh.
Scared to do any of that, but I was probably too busy. I don't know, playing out in the backyard. Honestly, just randomly doing whatever. Your dad was the preacher at church, so you grew up as a PK kid.
Very much
I
so.
guess. Yeah.
Yes.
What was that experience like for you?
It was fun. My parents were very intentional about trying their best to insulate us from any of the PK pressure or public scrutiny, I guess. But, you know, we always joke that I've probably been to more funerals than anyone else my age, because every funeral, because we were homeschooled, so we had that time flexibility. We would get dragged to the church and make the punch. We always joke we're expert punch makers and help set the tables. So a lot of forced service, I guess. But that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to teach kids the world doesn't revolve around you and to serve in the church. You know, people's opinions about things, but my parents tried their best to not let it get to us.
Any minister's kids kind of have a glass house feel to them, or they can feel like they're in a glass house and get a lot of criticism, and people expect certain things out of these kids that they might not expect in anybody else. What is your relationship like with your sibling?
Oh, we're very close. And I agree, by the way, my parents are awesome. Very just humble, just dedicated their lifetime to a service in the kingdom of God. And we're all very close. Like I said, I have 3 older siblings. 2 of them live in Oregon. And then my brother Ben lives here in Edmond with his wife and 2, soon to be 3 kids.
How often do you get to see your siblings in Oregon?
Miriam and her family just came down here for the 4th of July, spent the holiday with us, and then I'll go out there sometime maybe later in the late summer or fall, and then they'll usually come here for Christmas. So we try to trade going out there versus coming here.
Yeah. 16 or so, you left Sacramento.
moved here to Edmond, Oklahoma, and finished out high school here, joined a local co-op, and joined the youth group here at Memorial Road, which hugely shaped me. Phil Brookman, shout out to Phil Brookman, my youth minister, who had a big role in forming me spiritually, shaping me. The Memorial Road Youth Group is a wonderful thing.
What were some of the most formative moments in youth group? I'm curious.
Oh, that's actually easy. Winterfest would be one, but there was this one time where Phil, he founded this optional group on spiritual disciplines. It was totally optional, and it was outside of a Sunday morning class or Wednesday night church. It was just, if you want to, come on a Monday night, I think, and Phil would teach us about spiritual disciplines. And I said, that sounds great. I want to learn about that. And so I'd show up on Monday nights, and a lot of kids did show up. And that was my first time being formally trained, really. It was like a training camp.
What are the spiritual habits that kind of continue to feed you and help you stay close to the Lord?
I'm a big believer in fasting, biblical fasting. I know sometimes a lot of people will say, I'm going to fast from my phone or from social media. And that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. But it's not really the fast Jesus expresses in the Bible. There's just something to depriving yourself of food. So I think it's good if you give biblical fasting a shot, and then just meditation, not trying to torture meaning out of the words, but just letting it feed you. So I think those would be the two.
You graduate, and then you have a decision to do something. What did you decide?
Went to OC, quickly declared a political science major. That was easy. No brainer.
No brainer. Because you were so interested in it at that point.
Very much so. And I didn't know specifically in what capacity at that time, but I knew I wanted to work in the government sphere or in the policy sphere.
What kind of pulled you into that?
A love of history and learning about strains of thought and ideologies and how those come into play in the thing we call the reality we live in, and the laws that you follow and the money that gets taken out of your paycheck and all that kind of stuff. So, there are always issues of the day, whatever time period you're talking about, and I had opinions, and I think anyone involved in this space has opinions. So I wanted to get in on it and be a part of it.
You go to OC, you start studying political science. What was that experience like?
It was very fun. Had great professors and great opportunities. I did a lot of internships, which is unpaid labor, but it does pay off later. So I interned for Senator James Langford, Governor Fallon. I interned at a policy advocacy think tank downtown. So I did a lot of unpaid internships that helped me form those network connections early on.
Yeah.
So that by the time I got to graduation, I had those contacts to reach out to, and which resulted in employment. Senator Langford, of course, is a great man of faith, great family, very clear on his values and what he believes. And just learning in those office environments about roles and who has what portfolios and what expertise, and learning kind of how to navigate a political chessboard, navigate agendas. And I don't say that like a dirty word. People in politics have agendas. That's not breaking news.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Just like you, everybody wants to go in and make a difference.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So that was a very good experience, just learning, so that I would be prepared when it came my turn to have a job.
And then you worked for Governor Fallon.
Yes.
Yeah, what was that one like?
That was very fun. Big office, different departments within the office. I was a policy intern, which, spoiler alert, when I graduated, I was hired to be an employee in the policy department. So it was a very useful internship to learn the job I would eventually have. I graduated and then went straight to get my master's degree at OU. And it was after I graduated from OU, that's when I entered the workforce.
OU for a master's?
Yes, I did.
In political science? Or?
Yes, in public administration, specifically in public policy, which is my bag. I always say in politics, there are different tracks you can take. There's the campaign world. not my world at all. That's a very specific breed of people, and respect to the people who do that. But there's the campaign, or like working for the party. There's the lobbying and advocacy side. And then there's what I do, which is policy. And that is getting into the cogs and wheels of how government works. That's statutes. That's implementation of the statutes. It's very wonky and maybe a little nerdy, but it is the heart of what makes a government work. It's the non-sexy, just very academic side of how government runs.
And so you got a master's degree. It almost feels like a law degree in a sense.
It's more about policy and policy implementation versus in law school, you're more looking at jurisprudence and how to interpret laws and assess decisions. Okay. So a little bit different.
Okay.
In the governor's office as a policy analyst, and there were 4 of us in that office, and you each have your own portfolio. So my other coworker had education, another coworker had insurance and banking, someone else had agriculture, oil, and gas. I had health policy. I had I had military affairs. We have 5 bases, which is a huge deal, by the way. Even California, I don't think, has that many bases, and they have faced many base realignment and closures, BRAC, BRACs. Oklahoma has never had a BRAC, it's devastating if you experience a BRAC, and that is in part due to the credit of the late, great Senator Inhofe, who was the chair of the Armed Forces Committee in the United States Senate. So we have 5 bases, which allows us as a state to punch way above our pay grade. So it's a wonderful thing. And I was blessed to have military affairs in my bag, and then federal affairs, and then workforce development. So yeah, health policy, federal, military, and workforce was my bag.
What were some of the victories that you celebrated most, or some things that you're like, man, that was awesome?
I would say any of the meetings of the National Governors Association, NGA. We had 2 NGA meetings every year, one in Washington, D.C. in the wintertime, and then one somewhere out in any state in the summertime. And just getting together and it was never perfect attendance of 50 governors, but let's say in any given meeting, there were 42 governors and all their respective staffs. And I'll never forget at the winter meeting in Washington, D.C., we're staying at the JW Marriott, which I don't know if you know D.C., but it's right across from Lafayette Square, right off the White House. And let's say 42 governors and all their staffs in one hotel, totally locked down. The FBI is everywhere.
Wow.
FBI and the German Shepherds would come into your bedroom every day for a sweep. It's a very technocratic type thing. Like, oh, you're from Wyoming, you're from Florida, you're from Texas, you're from New Jersey. And we're all talking about health policy. It's a little nerdy, but it's very intellectual, and it's not really political.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that it is a little bit, but not the way we talk about it. Very like cogs and wheels.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the other thing that stands out was there was one year where there were multiple revenue failures in one year. A revenue failure is when revenue that comes into the general revenue fund of the state of Oklahoma comes in under 95% of the certified revenue estimate. And just seeing the tough choices, the really hard decisions that had to be made when you're faced. Think of your own budgets. I have this much income, but my expenses, and something's going to have to give, and just the hard choices of what goes into that, and seeing the negotiations process, which I was not personally a part of, but just observed the senior staff and the governor, of course, with the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate in behind the closed doors that I was not inside of, but until 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight, like every night in a row, just making those hard, unpopular decisions.
I think there's this visual that sometimes we have because of what we see on TV sometimes of everybody's leaving the house and they're going wherever, and it's like, oh, they're not really working up there. But the reality is they are working hard.
They are working hard. The reality of politics is compromise, meaning not everyone is going to walk away with every single thing they want. So no one will walk away totally happy or totally sad, but you'll walk away with something. And our chief of staff, who was the Speaker of the House, our chief of staff would always say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Meaning, if you're just some ideological purist who sits on their grand ivory tower just saying, no, I don't like it unless it's completely what I want, you're never going to get anything done. And I know there are a lot of armchair quarterbacks who have the luxury of being ideological purists who just, sneer at everything unless it's completely good. I'm like, well, that just shows me you've never worked in government in your life. Compromise and negotiations, you have to give and take. I worked in a few of the executive branch agencies until I made the switch to the legislative branch, which is where I work now.
Yeah. So, when did you make that switch?
3 years ago. So I'm officially in the legislative branch now.
Has this always been where you wanted to get to?
I so enjoyed working for the elected people, whether it's Senator Langford or the governor, which are all executive branch functions. I just had not given it much thought, but I am loving the legislative branch. It's a fun time.
How would you describe your job now working with the legislative branch?
I work in the office responsible for supporting both the House and the Senate, both chambers, both parties, with making data-driven decisions about fiscal transparency, efficiency, and effectiveness of government programs. So it's a really fun job. It's such a pleasure to get to work with both the senators and the representatives and supplying them with data to help them make the decisions they make.
Can you give me an example of a thing that you worked on? Like, could you kind of explain one?
We were asked to look into, we do evaluations, that's what it's called. We were asked to evaluate the election board, the state election board, which manages the county election boards. To make a long story short, the evaluation was one that our findings were all positive, that it's wonderful, it's great. It's actually a national model for best practices. You have every reason to have full confidence in the system. It's essential. It's a uniform system. Every computer, it's fantastic. What a pleasure to have an evaluation where we could say, this is a jewel. This is a national jewel. People look to our state for how to run elections well.
What a good thing to know.
Yes.
To hear that
yes.
My vote is going to really mean something.
Absolutely.
When
you take your paper and you slide it into that machine and it gives you the check mark that it's been kept, you can trust the lockdown mechanisms, the fact it's all excellent.
I'm curious about, here we are in Edmond, Oklahoma, right on the outskirts of Oklahoma City. What would you say are your main concerns personally, politically?
That's a good question. I care a lot about how I see people approaching politics. I see a lot of emotionalism around it, which I don't necessarily think is useful or helpful. I also don't like how reactive things have become. Ideally, everyone would have a coherent political systematic ideology, that what you think about human nature affects what you think about the role of government, which affects what you think about private property. It should be the systematic political ideology. It's starting with an understanding of what is human nature, and then after that, okay, what's the role of government? And I think the Bible speaks to that. 1 Peter 2 and Romans 13, primarily saying to punish those who do evil and protect or reward those who are righteous. And so once you start forming those baseline things, then you can get to your views on private property, which affects your view on taxation.
Are you concerned about fake news?
By that you mean false information?
Yes. It seems like there is some people have an agenda to mislead.
Well, of course, that's a problem. That's how those organizations or outlets make money, is through clicks. And unfortunately, we have these little black boxes we carry around in our pockets whose algorithms reinforce this echo chamber so that all you're seeing is the things you already believe. But I place that responsibility squarely on every single individual. You have to make sure you are seeking out a broad range of sources, and then making sure that it's based in instead of sensationalism in fact and in law. So yeah, but that's everyone's responsibility.
It is, and in a very practical way. I mean, I think it's some of those fake news things or things that we read that are trying to push our emotions in a certain direction.
Absolutely.
And so then it's a matter of, okay, how do I find the truth? How do I know what's actually happening?
Yes.
I think so. And here we are, people of faith. Jesus often said, do not be afraid. And I really take that practically. I think even in this realm, what we're talking about, I think there is this idea that we have to not be afraid about what's happening at large. I think we should be informed. I think we should stay current, understand what's going on, and make sure we're being like Jesus in those moments and where we can.
For Christians not to be embarrassed about living out their values in the public sphere. If you think of what the Christian's goal is, I think Jesus modeled that in the Lord's Prayer when he said, "May your kingdom come and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven."
You were born out of the country. I've got to ask you your thoughts on immigration today. Does that concern you? Are there certain things that are kind of especially heated for you right now in regard to immigration?
Because I have lived in a third world country, I appreciate this country very much so, maybe more than your average person. I'm a policy person. I'm a law and order person. And if the laws on the books say one thing, I think those laws should be enforced. And if you want to change them, your congressman or congresswoman or senator should go change them.
Those are touchy subjects right now.
Yeah.
And I know, like you were talking about emotions, I think people are on either side. They struggle with trying to keep it in perspective. When you're working in a situation, especially with policy, when you're dealing with policies that you feel like almost go against your faith, that would be tricky. I don't know if you've run into that situation or not, but that would be tough for me, I think.
Yeah. Our rights don't come from the government. Obviously, famously, they said Thomas Jefferson endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. That came from John Locke, who was an English philosopher. And so the government doesn't give us our rights. If the government gave us our rights, the government could take them away. It says God gives us our rights, and government is not to infringe upon those rights. So it's in terms of the history of human civilization until that point, a completely startlingly new perspective.
Do you have future ambitions? Do you have what's in your future for you?
That's a great question. I am so blessed. I love my job very much. Currently getting into working on this side of government in the legislative branch. But, I enjoyed working for elected individuals so much. That was so fun. I would definitely be open to working for another elected individual, whether that's on the congressional side or governor, whatever.
Does Washington, D.C., the national level, is that something that you ever consider?
No. I think early on, like immediately after college, I did. And fun fact, I actually had an interview at the White House. 2 interviews, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It was 2 interviews, one in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and the other interview in the Domestic Policy Council, the DPC, which is responsible for crafting any president's domestic agenda as opposed to the National Security Council. That whole scene, which is a whole different level, I'm happy to let other people do that.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the Young Adult World podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to speaking with you.
This has been such a cool conversation for me, just to hear you talk about current events right now and just your heart in everything and your specific jobs. I think I have probably a more clear understanding of what you do now than I ever have.
Yes.
Which I love. So,
well, good.
Yeah. Well, keep going. We need you to keep doing what you're doing. We need more people like you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think it's fantastic that you're there.
Well, we are zealously tracking your taxpayer dollars to make sure it goes to what the law says it's supposed to go to and not to other extracurricular activities. So we are making sure that when you pay those taxes, they're going to be held accountable.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. I hope this conversation was meaningful to you. Come find us on Instagram. Our profile is Young Adult World Podcast. Tell us what you connected with during our podcast today. This podcast is part of the Young Adult Ministry at the Memorial Road Church of Christ in Edmond, Oklahoma. Come join us sometime. There's plenty of room for everyone. If you want to reach out to us, don't hesitate to email us at youngadultworldpodcast@gmail.com. And we are so grateful for Jacob Staten. Jacob is a young adult who edits this podcast for us and keeps this thing going. So thanks, Jacob. Okay, guys, see you next time for another Young Adult World conversation.